Man, oh man, oh man. You guys might be hearing this so often coming out of my mouth, but how can I not say it? Sloan Bella told us that. The roof is going to keep caving in on Diddy. The truth is going to keep coming out. And that is how it's all going to go down. And every day, it is consistently something new, something impactful in a negative sense, something implicating Diddy consistently. This time around, it is Diddy being implicated in the death of our icon, Michael Jackson. Like, there's actually no forgiving this man for anything. But again, his sins are not for us to forgive or not forgive. That is between him and God. But we can always remain in our feelings as how we see fit, and we can always have our opinion and exercise our freedom of expression. Now, guys, a journalist is exposing everything as it relates to Diddy and his implications in Michael Jackson's death. Basically, there's Diddy's former head of security just left out of college. This young man was just like, what, 23? He did business, did nothing in the field of security, and he was, you know, put in as Michael Jackson's head of security team just a few days before he died. He was there when Michael Jackson died, and there's connection between this man and Diddy. I'm gonna share the clip with you guys, but before we get into that clip, there's something that I want to address because some people believe that we should not be talking about a black man in this manner. Some people believe that it's all a setup, it's all a trap for these black men to be going down. Listen, these black men were greedy and they signed up to be background masters. Remember, if they had listened to the teachings of Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, they wouldn't have fallen for the trap that they're currently in. Remember, the slavery system will always be revised, always be reintroduced. And because many Black people do not have a legacy to inherit from, many of us are determined to become so wealthy that we don't have any morals to how we want to accumulate wealth. Some of us have lost our godness, and many of these celebrities have lost their godness. And because of that, they are falling for the trap of doing these elites' dirty work. And when you look at the elites, they are the lighter, brighter folks more than 80% of the times. Not all the time, but more than 80% of the times. And the black man is just there as the backer master, taking the whip, whipping his fellow black brothers and sisters. So while many people are saying that, we should not promote the downfall of our black men. What about what the black men have done to their fellow black brothers and black sisters? We cannot just be one sided in our feelings because it's not as though there isn't any shred of evidence or any ounce of truth to the implications that is coming out against these men. There are, some available truth that is evident to us. Many of it is also hidden. But let's get into the clip from this journalist that is breaking down Diddy's connection to Michael Jackson's death. And that will be the end of the video.
Michael Jackson conspiracy theories are back on the table. P. Diddy's sexual blackmail ring puts Michael Jackson's whole life story in a whole new light. So this new lawsuit just came out that shows tons of evidence that P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, has been running a sexual blackmail operation very much like Jeffrey Epstein, but in the rap and music industry for basically 30 years. And in that lawsuit, we learned that his head of security while he's running the sexual blackmail ring is this guy named Fahim Muhammad, who before working for Diddy was the head of security for Michael Jackson when he was only 21. And he was one of the first people on the scene when Michael Jackson died. And before we go to Michael Jackson, the most important part of the Diddy case to bring across is the fact that the record executives at the very top knew what P. Diddy was doing. They were attending the parties with underage girls where they were spiking drinks. They were deeply involved in Diddy's personal life, and all evidence points to them supporting his operation, or at the very least turning a blind eye to it. So, let's revisit Michael Jackson, the king of pop, knowing what we know today. Starting in 1993, Michael Jackson was repeatedly accused of inappropriate things with children. And most of us eventually took that story and were like, okay, that's messed up. Michael Jackson's a bad dude. Without necessarily taking into account the way that the press had been smearing him in really messed up ways for years. And then a bunch of documentaries were made before and after his death, smearing him left, right, and center. But the Diddy lawsuit directly points out and reminds us that the people that own the record companies also own the media publishing businesses that can print the tabloids. They have close relationships with the people that own the newspapers and the magazines that print these stories, that make these movies. That's how they offer record contracts to people and then get them to the top of the charts right away. That is, if they play ball, if you know what I mean. But when you actually look into the evidence, the FBI were investigating Jackson for 10 full years, and they presented no evidence of criminal conduct on Jackson's part. The files have been declassified and you can view them yourself. They include a raid of his home where they confiscated all electronics. This is their ID number that you'll see. We're talking computers, hard drives, cell phones, where they say the amount of gigabytes. And then following are pages like this where they have the ID of the different devices and they all say nothing. Literally. They all say this. They found nothing. But that didn't stop the press from running made-up stories about how secret FBI files revealed that Jackson had paid millions in hush money to dozens of boys he had abused, despite the FBI files directly negating that statement. And to be clear, Jackson was a weird dude. He grew up in one of the most effed up environments imaginable. He had basically no father figure and was kept from his mother. And the press has repeatedly tried to make him seem even weirder to us. But sometimes they publish articles trying to make him seem like wacko jacko, which is super racist. We'll get into that another time. But they actually wind up just showing his humanity, like how he's shocked by the real world because he doesn't understand it. In this article, they explain how when he first saw a homeless person, he was like, "What's that?" And his driver had to explain to him what a homeless person was. And he was like, holy shit. And he made them stop the car and he watched for a while, then gave the woman $300. And then when they saw that a man that she was with was about to try to take it from her, Jackson went and gave him $300. And she was crying and said that he'd saved her. And then he spent the rest of that day driving around, giving out $100 bills to homeless people, saying how it's just amazing that the world could be so messed up. He sang about this kind of stuff all the time. In that same article, they also confirmed that he likes women, not underage ones, and he had a secret girlfriend that he was seeing on the side, but keeping it away from his kids, and would always be back before they woke up. So they branded him as Wacko Jacko early on and just like totally annihilated his public image. But what you might not have known is that that is a direct reference to a monkey, a fighting monkey from an old, who was like a cartoon character, basically. His name was Jacko Macaco. And for the longest time, you could actually buy Jacko monkey dolls. And we could talk about how all the boys that accused him of things actually were in the middle of launching really successful entertainment industry careers when they made those allegations about what had allegedly happened to them when they were tiny children, despite having previously gone on their stand and under oath saying that nothing had ever happened. But that would just be a waste of time. One of the far more interesting and relevant claims is that Michael Jackson said a lot of things about Jewish people, particularly later in his career. And then he was smeared to all hell and back as an anti-Semitic Nazi, except that when you search YouTube for the actual original phone call recording where he called Jews leeches, YouTube won't let you see it. You can't find it. Instead, they feed you a bunch of videos that are of this other phone call that seems to be his doctor that allegedly killed him, calling him when he was in the midst of heavy sedation and getting him to talk on the phone in slurred speech about how shitty his life was while he was completely fucked up on drugs that his doctor that was talking to him probably knew he was high on. I don't know, just feels like a smear job to me. But when you search it on Twitter, you can find those videos no problem. Just saying. And that's not because X supports anti-Semitic content. That's because X allows you to get to primary sources. Because if you want to know how history happened, you need to be able to access the primary sources. And yes, Jackson did say that the Jews are, probably referring to the Jews in the music industry, are like leeches and that they took everything from them and that they did it on purpose. But when you look into those allegations or those insults, you realize that because of his will that was probably fake and filed right before his death. So the will was signed on July 7th in Los Angeles by 3 witnesses. But Jackson's family pointed out that he was in New York that day and there's video proving it. So they changed their story. But the witnesses definitely saw it and it was just in New York. So anyways, because of this will, John Branca was put in charge of his estate, which included his net worth of $230 million, but far more importantly, his 50% share of Sony ATV worth $750 million. Yes, he was taking on Sony. He was going after the hand that feeds him. And when you look into John Branca, in 2003, Jackson fired Branca because he was siphoning money out of Jackson's accounts in collusion with Sony Music CEO Tommy Mottola and funneling it through a bunch of offshore accounts in the Caribbean. John Branca is Jewish, and Tommy Mottola is also Jewish. Plus, Tommy Mottola married Mariah Carey partway through his life when she was a young woman, and he was an old man. And there are other allegations about that whole situation you can look up on your own. In the first video I made about the Diddy case, where I broke down the whole thing, I went through a whole bunch of music executives that are involved in that case or that come about when you start looking into it. And every single person that I showed in that video that was not black was Jewish. Because whether you like it or not, whether you want to call people names about it or not, the vast majority of the power in the music industry is controlled by Jewish men. Another good example who we have not talked about yet is Lou Pearlman, who is famous for the boy bands NSYNC and Backstreet Boys. Not trying to say that all Jewish people are bad. People are just people. They make their own choices. But in the music industry, there are a fuckload of Jewish men that are doing shitty things to people. And in a few other industries too, when you think about it. We'll make another video about that. For most of Jackson's career, his head of security was Bill Bray, who was his mentor and basically his father. And the two were extremely close. Bill ran his security until he was 70 when he retired, and Jackson continued to pay his medical bills until he died at age 80. This is a letter that Michael Jackson wrote to Bill that is both really touching and really enlightens you as to the state of Michael Jackson's education and his perspective on the world and his life story. Pause if you want to read that. But then once Bill retired, Jackson was then protected by other security people that came and went. And he wound up with this guy who has direct connections to Diddy's sexual blackmail operations, who was directly complicit in covering up crimes for Diddy and covering up murders, covering up drug use, prostitution, human trafficking. This is the guy that was protecting Michael Jackson the day that he died. The day that he was overdosed on drugs after he was probably already asleep, and the only witnesses, there were no witnesses to the crime. I'm honestly kind of surprised that this guy never got checked into as a suspect. I'm not trying to make any allegations, I'm just saying anyone can inject a dude with lots of propofol. So, knowing what you know now about the entertainment industry, about the world, about how this all works, about Israel, I suggest you re-examine the story of Michael Jackson and you re-listen to some of his lyrics. I bet if I include the song, they'll take the video down for copyright as a way to silence this video, but you should probably re-listen to the lyrics for They Don't Really Care About Us. And if you find the censored version, you should probably find out what the words that they censored are. And you know, looking into this whole story of Michael Jackson, the one thing that I couldn't stop thinking about is, man, that sounds a lot like Kanye West.
Viral because there's so much, truth in it, and there's so much connection as it relates to Diddy, Michael Jackson, and so many similarities to, what has been happening to Ye. So I hope you guys have learned something from this. Let me know what are your thoughts. Give this video a big thumbs up. Stay safe, stay blessed, stay prayed up. See you guys next time. Peace.